Anyway, good morning, good afternoon. I'm recording this afternoon with the lovely Shelley Bosworth. And when I started the series of recording on the podcast, it was a no-brainer to interview Shelley, because I'm going to let you introduce yourself in a minute. But Shelley, we've known each other for over 3 years, maybe nearly 4 years.
Yes. Yeah, we're heading towards 4, I think, now.
Yeah. And when I met Shelley, she was coming into the world of self-employed entrepreneurial stuff from a paid job, from a real job, as we call it now.
No, we don't. Yeah, no, we don't. We used to, but we don't anymore.
But no, you become a part of my network and a friend of mine. And in the last 9, maybe 12 months, it's coming up for a year. It's definitely coming up towards the year. Yeah. Shelley's also my business coach. So let me, you introduce yourself, Shelley, and then we'll get going.
Well, you just introduced me. So Shelley Bosworth coaching, as I always say. So I'm Steph's coach, but I'm a business and mindset coach. I used to have a real job in the corporate world for a really long time. And I've been in this game now since January 2020. So through that year we don't talk about, and still here 3 years later, loving it.
I was listening to a podcast this morning. Sorry, I've interrupted.
No, go on. No, tell me about the podcast. Go on, that's much more interesting.
Podcast this morning, and I listen to Kathleen Ryan's podcast every week. If you don't know who she is, female comedian. And she was talking about a celebrity that I don't know, who was saying that she's not going to age in the same way because of COVID. She's not counting those years.
I love it.
So she's literally like, I didn't age in those 2 years. Those 2 years mean nothing. So I'm not going to be, in my case, I'm not going to be 48. I'm actually still going to be 45 or 46, however we count them. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting.
I quite like that theory, although I feel like I aged significantly in those years. So I'm not sure I get to use that tag in the same way. But I do like the idea of that. Yeah, those years that we don't talk about anymore. Or a bit like the Harry Potter, there's he who shall not be named is the year that shall not be mentioned.
It's the time that just seems like the most surreal experience that we had, and we can't actually believe we had it.
And I'm totally there now. I am totally in this, and I see my memories come up. And around this time of year as well, because of course it all started in the March, didn't it? So we were still in that, slight novelty, but now realizing this is a bit more serious than we all thought at the beginning. I look at my Facebook memories and I'm just like, God, we actually lived like that.
Yeah.
Just a very surreal time.
Very, very bizarre time. But as I was saying, with the podcast, obviously I'm interviewing every now and again women who I consider are thriving. It is a result of the entire lifetime experience they've had up until this point. And I know your story, but I am going to let you share your story, because you have thrived in the face of difficulty, and COVID being one of them, and many of us will add that to our story. But as you know, and you do know my business inside out, because, well, that's what you do. I'm a firm believer in collateral beauty, and everything being part of the story of me, and why I show up the way I do, whether that's helpful or not. But in terms of collateral beauty, it's about learning to shape that to elevate you rather than suppress you. So what would you say has been the biggest part of your story of collateral beauty? It's a big question.
It is a big question, but I know the answer. So, like everybody, we've all got our stories, we've all got our life stories. And now I can see how so many experiences through my life have shaped who I am now. But I guess the biggest, I love that you use that collateral, I love that you use that phraseology, the collateral beauty. And very similar to your big point in your story, sadly mine involves the loss of people, actually. So the big turning point in my life was, short version, the loss of both of my in-laws in a very short period of time. So my husband and I married in 2015.
You just had your anniversary.
We've literally just had our anniversary. So yes, yesterday was our anniversary, 8 years. Not bad for someone who said she was never getting married. Yeah, so we got married back in 2015, and I say this with absolute sincerity. I adored my in-laws. I had a very, very strong relationship with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law was an interesting character. He wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but I thought he was bloody fabulous. He was cantankerous and opinionated, and we used to have some brilliant rows. But sadly, in 2015, my father-in-law was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 63, and he deteriorated very quickly and passed away in 2018. So watching that journey, that loss of life literally twice, because they very often say with dementia, Alzheimer's, you grieve before you grieve, because you're a person. And he was young, he was physically very healthy at the beginning. That was a massive moment for me. I just turned 40, and I watched these two people who were in so many ways living the dream, suddenly having that dream ripped away from them. They hadn't finished living their dream. And then so he passed away in June 2018. And 9 months later, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with terminal cancer. We said goodbye to her within 11 weeks. So saying goodbye to the pair of them in less than 12 months changed mine and my husband's outlook.
I mean, because most of the time you expect like illnesses to be a sustained period of time. Like you don't expect that boom, boom, like literally like this is your diagnosis, and you, I mean, I don't suppose you were told you've got this much time, but at the same time, you expect something. Do you expect a bit more longevity in that?
Yeah, well, which one are we talking about, I guess? So,
well, I think for your father-in-law, when I hear, those types of illnesses, the stories I've heard about them is the longevity and the sadness around all of that.
Yeah, and I suppose, interestingly, and I almost struggle saying this out loud, in that I'm glad we didn't have that longevity. I mean, whilst I would give anything for more time with him, for him, we are so glad it actually happened as quickly as it did. I mean, it is quite rare. I mean, it's relatively rare for him to be diagnosed as early as he was. Although, that said, we believe, we'll never really know, we believe it's highly likely that, of course, it was already there. The diagnosis, he was 63. We did that really helpful thing when he was diagnosed. We all do this, right? Like hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's also not always very helpful, isn't it? That bit where you go, do you know what, actually, do you remember when? And then, so we did that whole kind of looking for all the evidence of why didn't we see this before? What bloody use was that? So in hindsight, he was probably struggling for a few years before the diagnosis. So whilst we had 3 years, there's every chance he'd been struggling for 3, 4, 5 years before that. Now, when you then start to say maybe it was 8 years, that's more like what people expect, because most people expect a 5 to 10 year period. They also expect it to be when you're much older. So yeah, you are right. It is strange to have only had, it was so quick. And actually, the reality was the first 12 months, the change from diagnosis to 12 months later, he was in a home within just over 12 months because we couldn't care for him and he couldn't care for himself. Now, I personally, we've talked about this too, I wonder, and a bit like the same with my mother-in-law, how much of that was almost like the permission. The diagnosis gave him permission to go, I'm not well and I can't do these things, and I've been struggling to hide this from you for a really long time. We don't know, because he wasn't able to articulate that. But 3 years literally from diagnosis. So June the 10th was diagnosis, and he passed away on the 27th of June 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, that put life in perspective.
How did it change everything?
So we were, and my husband is in the corporate world still, we were your typical highly driven, ambitious, earning a lot of money corporate couple. So we worked all the hours. We had a lovely house, a lovely car, had all the holidays, but my God, we were exhausted. And we were like ships in the night. So a good week for Guy and I would be to see each other maybe 2 nights, to be at home together 2 nights a week, because I worked away a lot, and if I wasn't away, he was away. And that, the biggest thing that came out of that experience was it wasn't that we hated our work. So I loved my work, Guy loved his work. but we loved each other and wanted to be actually together. We were married and never actually together. We were living for our holidays, and that just didn't feel like any kind of life. And actually, how long were we going to do that for? Watching two people who were in their early 60s, who had retired early, so they retired in their mid 50s, but they hadn't really got to experience everything they'd wanted to. That was the bit around, I don't want to work till I'm 60. And actually, I don't know how I get to finish this sooner in current state of play. So it just kind of started opening up questions of what could we do differently. So yeah, that was the biggest piece. I don't want to spend as much time away from my husband as I am, because I want to live life.
Did he feel the same way? Did he come to the same kind of conclusions?
Very much so. Now, different kind of conclusions in terms of what does that look like. So for those that don't know, I am a cougar, loud and proud. My husband is 11 years younger than me. So we were at different places in terms of, we've got so many similarities to get on, incredibly, but I'm 10 years ahead of him in terms of where my career was at. Not necessarily in terms of the level I'd got to, but I'd worked 10 years more, let's say. So he is still in the corporate world. We did that thing though, where after Guy's dad passed away, we said, something's got to shift, something's got to change. And guess what? 6 months later, we were working really long hours. We were, and actually it was after Guy's mum passed away that we said that can't happen again. We normalise everything really quickly, don't we? We all know that from the pandemic. And we just went back to normal. So the real shift was after losing Paula. I don't like the word losing. After saying goodbye to Paula, we said we're not going to go back to exactly how it was previously. Now, we didn't know there was a pandemic around the corner, but that was the moment of real shift and change. And that was when I said, well, because I'd already started the coaching journey in the background, what if I actually left my corporate job and started a business? Do you think I could? And I didn't think I could. So I set out a 3-year plan, and 7 months later, I left my corporate job.
You actually did it strategically. I mean, it doesn't surprise me in any way, shape or form. Like that you've actually just went, right, I now need to write a plan of how I'm going to work for myself.
Yeah.
Would ever cross my mind. I'd be like, I've handed you notice in, shit, what are we doing now?
Even saying those words out loud, even now, there was no way I could do it. No, I absolutely. I mean, it wasn't like a full business. It was really a business plan, but I wrote a plan of, essentially what I did was I first and foremost wrote what needs to be happening for me to be able to leave. So there was a big part, financially, I wanted to have a certain amount of financial security. Therefore, I decided I had to have a certain amount of money in the bank. And that had to come from me as well, because I was a massive, I contributed equally at points of our relationship a little bit more. My husband doesn't mind me saying that, to come away from that and know that I wouldn't be able to do that. That was not even an option. So first part was, I want to ensure we've got a certain amount of money in the bank, because I've got loads of money stuff going on, and continue to work that now. And then, okay, but what do I actually need to do? So I'm spontaneous, but I'm not impulsive. So when I decide I want to go for something, I will go for it, and usually relatively quickly, but I'll still do the research and the work in the background to ensure I know at least how I start this. I'm not then glued to the plan and can't come away from the plan, as you'll well know, because flexibility is a strength of mine. But yeah, I did set out this is what I need to do. I think I could probably leave my corporate career in 3 years' time. But remember, this is someone that knew nothing about the entrepreneur world. I knew nobody that ran their own business, and I did not grow up in a world where this was encouraged. But my biggest fear when I actually resigned was telling my father, because my dad taught me, you work hard at school, you get a good job with a really good benefits package, and you work till this age, and you make sure that your pension is sorted and your mortgage is paid off, and you do that through a very stable income.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how he kind of his dialogue was running at that point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I can still feel the feeling the day I told him what I was planning. Now, credit Dad, because my dad usually gets a really hard time in anything I talk about. I should give him some credit for once. He surprised the living hell out of me and said, I think you should. After what you two have been through, I think you should go for it. I'm proud of you. And if it doesn't work out, you'll deal with that. And I was like,
I just immediately thinking, I wonder what little Shelley thought about that.
I can tell you now, I was shocked. I not just little Shelley, big Shelley too. Steph, big Shelley probably had a couple of tears because, you know, Dad said the proud word. Yeah. I don't mean to this day, I still absolutely, I don't have daddy issues, just for clarity, but my father's approval is important to me. And I know he's really proud of what I've achieved, as am I. But yeah, you know, this is big for him too, because, and interestingly, my dad's parents did have their own business and they struggled and they had to work really hard, and they didn't have huge amounts towards the end of their life to show for it. So I think a lot of my dad's beliefs come, I don't think, or no, because of the work we do, you know, because that comes from that. So it only comes from a good place, but yeah.
As most of it always does. And I think I was talking to someone about the generations of parents and how the narrative that they roll. And I think from my parents' perspective, their parents were post-war children.
Yes.
So they were born into the coming out of a very awful time of lack and, you know, no food, rationing, this whole feeling that we have to watch every penny.
Yeah.
We have to eat everything in the house. Like my nan was obsessed with, like, don't waste food, don't do this, don't throw that away, because she'd lived that life of rationing.
Absolutely.
So that was deeply in bed. And my dad's parents were, you know, very humble. They had a council house. My dad was raised that way. And my dad was out working at 15 to contribute to the family income. To make sure everybody had food, everybody had what they needed, everybody worked really hard. And the definition of really hard was like long days and backbreaking. And it's not helped. I mean, my dad was an extremely successful business owner and has been from the age of 15. However, he doesn't know how to stop now. He's he is 75 and he is just struggling to stop because it's all he's ever known. And that narrative was in all of us as we were raised, of you get a job as soon as you can, and you look after yourself, and you don't have things you can't afford. And that whole, like, he would look at people that were driving flash cars and be, well, that's going to run out soon if they keep spending like that, you know. So that's very deeply ingrained in me, and it's something I battle all the time with my money mindset of, but if I spend that, what if nothing else comes, you know. And that, as a self-employed business owner, it's one of the biggest challenges I think most of us have, is that the when I say proper job, like we were saying, is the PAYE, get your sick pay, get your holiday pay, you know it's coming. We don't
and even just that guarantee of that monthly number on that day, I know that, you know, that's a massive, it's a shift to come away from, but it's also what we are generally all taught is the only way to be. And it's still the same now in schools, so, you know, don't get on a rant about that. All those things you were just saying, that every single one, like literally, I'm like, oh my God, that's my, you know, I can hear my dad, I can hear my mum, I can hear my grandparents. Similar in terms of that, work hard, was backbreaking, all the hours. Just shedding that is hard work.
And it's a continuous job for me. I noticed, I asked someone recently, I have the awareness now, I know where the voice is coming from, so why won't it just fuck off? I just want it to
what was their answer? Because I mean, they could make a mint out of having the answer to that, couldn't they?
I just don't. I think I've come to the acceptance that it's okay for that, and it's just part of your story. And you know, I talk a lot about inner protecting and all of that, and it's just that it is. It really, but some days it's just loud.
Absolutely. But you know what? I'd rather have that voice and hear it than not notice it, and, you know, live a world of, you know, untapped potential, let's say, or hear it but not know what to do with it. I don't think it ever goes away. It doesn't ever go away. Because I absolutely, and you and I, you know, we talk about this a lot because we talk really, really openly. We're all about keeping it real. We've both talked about that money stuff and our money stories. And I totally with you, Steph. I still still to this day, in fact, in the last 10 days, you know, being out here thinking about moving and starting a second part of the business, you know, one of the first things that comes to mind, you know, what if I lose what I've got? Have I got enough money to go through that transition again? You know, it's always there, but I can see it for what it is now. I have the awareness, and therefore I think I'm learning to deal with it better and better every single time.
Do you think Shelley 5 years ago, or maybe Shelley 8 years ago, would have ever considered uprooting and going to live in Dubai?
Yes. Yeah, so she was more likely to uproot and live in a different country than she was to start her own business.
Okay.
Shelley of 8 years.
So she'd need the job security, you'd need the job.
Yeah. So I have always, and this probably comes from some of those childhood stories, so I always had this desire to travel. We didn't travel as kids, all right? A holiday for us was Yarmouth in a caravan. Okay, the first time I got on a plane was 16, 17 years of age, you know, and I've always wanted to see more of the world. Part of that driven by the hard done by little girl, part of that just by, you know, a bit of wanderlust and adventure in me. And I always said, so when I first went into the corporate world, I wanted to be, for no other reason than the travel perks, I wanted to be a buyer. I wanted to go into retail and be a buyer because they got to travel around the world. I mean, any buyer will tell you it's not actually as glamorous as you think. So that bit was always in me. I always wanted to not escape the UK, but be in other places. And I always wanted to live somewhere else and experience that. But I never thought, and 8 years ago, 6 years ago, you know, I never thought I'd be running my own business.
Wow. What do you think? Because when I'm listening to you talk, I've got so many questions. And I know that this is when you went to Dubai this time. So for those that are listening, Shelley is moving to Dubai. She's currently out there with her husband, but she's coming back, and then you're going permanently around August time, aren't you?
Yes.
But this time she flew business class.
I did, yeah.
What does little Shelley think about you flying business class?
Little Shelley is like, look at you. You never, honestly, you know. So I used to say this out loud a lot, and this is the little Shelley voice. People like me don't. People like me don't get to. People like us. And apologies to my mother, but that, you know, that definitely comes from my mum. You know, she had a very difficult and difficult monetary and difficult childhood. And so we were definitely brought up in the world of people like us don't get to do stuff like that. And little Shelley was like a kid in a sweet shop.
Was she like, play it cool, Shelley?
Honestly, I was. I swear to God, I was. Honestly, like, you know, you're all right. You get to be here. And look, the rational side of me, you know, I looked around me and you know, these people are normal. And you can afford to be here. You know, you haven't put this on a credit card you can't afford to pay, Shelley. You absolutely deserve and can afford to be here. But yeah, there was a bit of, you know, like when you do that thing, where you're checking out all the stuff. So I did all of that. I mean, I checked out everything you get. I got really excited about like the goodie bag, it's not a goodie bag, by the way. It's the toiletries bag they give you to refresh yourself in the morning. But for me, this was a goodie bag. I even brought it back and like, look, I know what I got. So can you tell I'm still excited about the whole experience? But yeah, little Shelley is still giddy with excitement that she got to do that.
Yeah,
and I guess the truth is there's still a bit of disbelief in that.
Yeah, I think because I think like I was saying, my dad would be so humbling that you don't show people what you've got. Like you just be like, I'm trying to think of the word, like you just be this person that's just doing their thing. Don't stand out. Just do your thing. And if like, I know that my dad watches me as I move through my career and stuff. And I know like he's, everything okay? Yeah, you're doing all right? Yeah, brilliant. You know, and but like every 3 years I chop in and get a brand new car. And I have been doing that for the last, since 2015, brand new. And the dialogue is never buy brand new, Steph. You lose $3,000 as soon as you drive
the minute you drive off the forecourt.
Yeah, and that is his voice going, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And I consistently do it every 3 years. I chop in my car and get another one. And I drive around in my car and I'm almost like, you know, I drive a mini convertible. It's really important to me. And I sometimes take my roof off and go, who do you think you are? if you take the roof off, like, who do you think you are? And it's just crazy.
And, you know, I'm thinking about like the voices in my head, which we've all got, by the way. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And actually, what I've got running through my head as you're saying that is less about the show off. It's actually there are more important things you could be spending your money on.
Yes.
That's it. You know,
yes.
like it's not about whether you can or can't afford it, but like, why would you spend that much money on, you know, a different seat when that money could be used for, that money could be paying off the mortgage, that money could be. That's what goes through my head as I sit listening to you and think, oh, what's that bringing for you, Shelley?
My son bought a car this year, the first car he's bought himself, and he was sort of saying, he was having this moment of doubt post signing the dotted line. What if I lose my job, and what if this? And Graham said to him, when your mum gets in her car, she goes, look at this car. He says, that's what it's all about, Jack. So if you get in that car and that's how you feel, then you get the car. You know.
Well, and we come back to, and your question to me earlier was, you know, what was the big moment?
Mm-hmm.
Life is short. Life is precious.
Yeah.
We all learn through that pandemic year. We have no idea what's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
So I am never somebody, and this is my money stuff, I will never have, you know, I'm not a big advocate of getting to debt. I'll never, you know, go, just pop it on. That's not who I am. But you know what? Life is for living. And if you can, and you've got it, and you know what, you're taking sensible risks, just do the damn thing. Make yourself smile. Give yourself that moment.
Did COVID change anything? Because there's a lot of people that talk about COVID from a really negative perspective, and what we don't know has happened to the children, we'll know in 10 years time, and blah blah blah, and all of this. But actually there's so much beauty as well from COVID. What did you take from that? Because it was a really difficult time for you.
It was a really difficult time. So I started my business in January 2020 with, you know, my 3-year business plan, and it didn't have a pandemic in it.
I wonder if anyone's did.
So, you know, everybody's pivoting, and I remember just going, I don't have a business to pivot. I mean, I don't actually know what I'm doing right now. Now, for me, the beauty, if you like, what COVID enabled me to do was build an online business far quicker than I thought I would. And, you know, look at me here now. That my business has afforded me that. Now, it was a very difficult year for us. So yes, I was trying to build a business. My husband was then made redundant at the height of the pandemic. So you want that money stuff, you can imagine the money stuff that came up at that point. And you know, that was a really challenging time for us. I think what it did was reinforce for us where we were already at. Life is short, life is precious, you just got to do the damn thing. And so what it really, personally, COVID really helped build my resilience. I think I was already quite a resilient person, but my resilience grew tenfold in that year. And it definitely gave me good grounding in terms of the business that I now run. Because going back to work wasn't an option. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. So for those that don't know, I was in the food and beverage world. And if you remember, you know, the food and beverage world was just obliterated through the pandemic. So really, whereas I told myself leaving my job, well, it's all right, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to work. You know, I'll call my boss, he'll give me, and he probably would have found something for me. Yeah. But actually it wasn't really an option. And that in reverse was one of the best things for me, as tough as that was at the time. It meant I went all in. And being in the situation of being locked in and not having, you know, not being able to get out, I used that time really wisely. I built really good foundations in the business, and I believe really strongly that's why I'm where I am now, because the foundations I built in that first year have absolutely propelled years 2 and 3. Yeah,
I think you're in all of my network. I think you are probably at the top of the tree when it comes to powering forward, keep going, showing up. Like, there are days where I just think I can't be asked. Like, I don't see you have those days. And I know you do, because it would be complete bollocks to say you don't. But what the visibility that I see is you are still there. You're still there. Your message is really consistent, which is really inspiring, because there are days, so many of us just want to switch it all off and just hide in a under your duvet, and being visible about in those times is just, it doesn't feel like the natural thing to do. How do you get over those days?
So I absolutely have those days. Let's just be really, really clear. But it's also, so that consistency of visibility. It was one of the things really early on I decided that was it, that was what was going to grow my business. We were in an online world. So how do I now, let's be really clear, I have help with that now. So I don't do all of that on my own, but we also have really clear strategic plans. So I don't get up in the morning and have to be in the right frame of mind or do any of that stuff. Everything is planned and prepared, and in fact what I allow is the ad hoc, if I just want to come along with something new. That has taken time. So I'm going to use a really good, it's process. We've built a process. The person that now supports me with that, I've been working with her for a year, but the first, I want to be really clear because I want the credit for this, first 2 years and 3 months was me on my own every freaking day. I mean, I would say quite proudly 6 days out of 7 I showed up. And that is what I'm known for, that, and that's helped build my profile in terms of what I do. So it absolutely, now the answer to that is process and planning. So I don't have to be in the right frame of mind because it's already there and ready to go. And I can, instead of thinking, oh, I've got to dig deep, what can I do, or what do I want to show up with today, I reverse that completely. And if I don't want that to be today's message and I want to change it because that's where I'm just feeling it's coming from, I can do that. And that's a very different feeling to, let's dig deep, come on, got to show up. And I learned that tactic I put that in place, that discipline, if you like, really early. So I got into planning in advance really early on. I always plan at least a week in advance. Of
everybody that I see online and that are in my network, you are just the absolute queen of doing that. It's incredible.
And look, I say to anyone, don't model yourself on that. Consistency doesn't mean consistently. Yeah. We have now got to a place where it is rare that I wouldn't show up in your feed if you're a follower of mine. But that's been a very conscious build to, and that's a decision that we've made strategically for my business. To anybody that's like, I just don't have, it doesn't have to be that. It could be consistently twice a week. You could sit in, and it's that bit about carve out the time when it works for you. And we're using socials as the example because it is the number one thing that knocks people at the knees. It just takes people out because it is a free marketing opportunity for any business owner. And if you can embrace it, it will work for you. You don't have to show up 6 days a week like I do. You could sit for an hour and a half and put 8 posts on the plan and show up twice a week for the next 4 weeks. It'd make a difference. But if you hate social media, the other thing is don't do it to yourself. I'm really clear with that as my message to anybody. Find someone to help you, or don't do it and find the thing you love.
Outsourcing can be a challenge in itself, though. And if you have a lack kind of mindset, and there's this whole kind of perpetual cycle that I think it's a female thing. I don't know if it's a male thing because I'm not one, but from all the people that I surround myself with, this is something that consistently comes up of, can I justify getting some help? I should be able to do this all myself.
Oh, God, we're such martyrs to ourselves.
We are, aren't we? It's just this
really
whole, but what will people think if I'm outsourcing? Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I manage all of this by myself? I've got the time to do it. Why can't I do it? And I think it is a conditioning that certainly now that women should be able to have it all and do it all and be living this best life. And what a load of shit.
Yes. Quite frankly, I am totally with you on that bullshit. And I don't mean bullshit, you can't have a great life. I don't mean you can't have it all. I'm saying you don't have to do it all. And look, I don't have kids, okay? So I don't have that added complexity in. And I always throw that in the mix because hats off to the mums in the world. I don't know how you do it. But that doesn't mean I don't have stuff. And that doesn't mean I don't have moments of, I should be able to do it all. There is something conditioned into all of us as women. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what happened, but we all have that. I also appreciate as well, when you're first starting out. I don't have the money for that.
Mm-hmm.
My reframe, and I invested early in my first outsourcing, and I probably didn't have the money for that. I did, because I didn't go into debt. But it was like, oh my God, this is, going to take close to the wire. But the first thing that I always ask myself is, well, what could I be doing instead? Because the stuff I outsource is the stuff that I'm not very good at. It takes me absolute freaking hours. That gets me stuck in my own head. That is no use to anybody and is not growing me or my business.
Mm-hmm.
What could I be doing instead?
Mm-hmm.
Having conversations like this,
mm-hmm.
supporting my clients. For every hour I'm not doing my social media, I can have another client in the books and help somebody else. So that's my go-to. What could I be doing instead if I weren't torturing myself, quite frankly, doing this?
Trying to learn something that you're never going to do to the best of your ability anyway, and you actually don't, and when you don't want to, and you're forcing yourself to do it.
That self-perpetuating circle is just not a place that it should be.
What do you admire about yourself the most?
That's a great question. So my tenacity, my resilience, and I'd say a bit of my courage as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're all really great buzzwords. What I basically mean is I keep going. Mm-hmm. And I think the last 4 years is testament to that. There has been, there have been days when I have literally looked up and gone, what the actual fuck? How much more can you throw down here? But I'm still here, and I'm really proud of where I am at, personally and professionally. And resilience has been a massive part of that. We have had huge amounts of curveballs thrown at us. And I keep it real. Like, one of my favorite phrases is I do not have all my shit sorted, but I'll also, I'll give most things a go. I'll absolutely practice as I preach. I will lead by example. Mm-hmm. And I didn't always. So, everybody, lots of people look at me now and I think they think, oh, she's so confident and she's so brave and she's so, inside there's this girl that, is still terrified of huge amounts of things and spent years of her life terrified doing most things, but putting on a really big front. It's less of a front these days. I guess that's what actually I admire about myself. I don't have as much of a front these days as I used to.
Mm-hmm. Would you class the resilience as a superpower? What would you say is your superpower or the superpowers?
So I think, that's a great question. Superpower. Yeah, I do think my resilience is a superpower, because resilience is about bouncing back. It's about getting back up and keeping going. And not many people, I'm sorry to say this, find that easy to do. I'm not saying I find it easy, but I still do it.
What's your process though?
It is acknowledging what's going on, actually. It's that. So I don't pretend it's all okay. I don't go, this isn't affecting me. So back to that, we all have those days. Absolutely, you have those days. And I acknowledge when I'm feeling like that. And I don't push it to one side and just say, just be positive. I go, okay, what's going on? And I allow myself to sit with that and work it through and understand. I work on myself constantly. I have huge amounts of self-awareness, and I'm really okay with showing the good, the bad, and the ugly of Shelley. And that is resilience. I'm okay with the ugly side of Shelley. I can be a shit. I can be moody. I can get caught in the comparison spiral, but I can see all those things for what they are. I allow them, and then I go, okay, but we don't want to stay here because you got goals, you got stuff you want to do, and this isn't really helping. So I talk a lot to myself, as you can probably tell.
That whole mantra that me and Lauren have always used is allow it, feel it, fuck it.
Yes. And so often I want to quote you to people, and I go, I can remember 2 of the 3. I just need to write that down. But I often quote you and Lauren. Absolutely. It's the mantra of life, isn't it?
No, it really is. And whether it's fuck it at the end or move forward or whatever,
it is.
However you interpret that. But I truly believe that with any superpower that we have, there's light and dark to that superpower. Yes. And it's working with the darkness to appreciate the lightness. I don't think, and coming back to the whole point of collateral beauty, I don't think personally, and this is a personal belief, I would experience the joy in my life I do now without the darkness of the sadness.
100%. Do you know what, I've had so many people over the last 4 years, however long I've been doing this, last few years, say, do you wish you'd realised in your 20s that you were meant to be a coach? Do you wish you started? The answer is no, because Shelley in her 20s, she's got, certain experience of life, but she's not the person that she is now. I am the coach I am now because of the experience of life that I've had now. And I am so much better for all that I've been through, the shit and the great. And I wouldn't change any of it. Of course, I would bring back lost ones if I could, but that's not realistic.
No.
So I wouldn't change any of it because I've learned so much along the way, and I'm, really proud of who I am now. I used to say to people, if you walked into a pub and met you, would you like you? It used to be one of my interview questions in my corporate world. And if I walked into a pub and I met me, I'd like me. I'm not sure if I could have said that back in my 20s. I was, a bit of an insecure.
I do think though, if I went in now and spoke to 18-year-old Steph and just said to her, there's some really difficult stuff that's coming, you're going to be okay, I think 18-year-old Steph will go, the fuck are you talking about, you idiot?
Exactly. Yeah. Do you know what? I love that question that people ask, like, what do you say to a young person? But the truth is, younger Shelley wouldn't listen at all, because younger Shelley thought she already fucking knew what she was doing, where she was going, and how the world worked.
Exactly. I had it down.
I might add.
At 19. I did.
I was, I don't know about yourself, but I bought my first home at 18. I was out in the corporate world. I was already in a pretty high paid job. I mean, I thought I was the shiz. I was not, I might add. And I wouldn't have listened.
No. But I think I would probably go, that old girl's all right. She's got something to say that might be quite interesting. I mean, she's a bit old, but
Oh God, yeah. And I thought this age was so old back then.
And we were having this conversation. Granger's 52 next week, and he was just like, years ago I'd just been like, 52, I'll probably be dead by then. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre.
Really bizarre. Really bizarre.
But if you was going to go back and speak to your younger self, what age would you pick?
Knowing what I know now, I think I would go back to late 20s, early 30s, because at that stage, so all my friends were kind of getting married, having kids, and I wasn't, and I was feeling a little lost. And I think, got the benefit of, I've just been through my 20s and partied pretty damn hard while working really hard too. I think that's when I'd actually say, it's all right, it's going to work out. Not back when I was 18, because I wouldn't have listened. Because I was, as I sit here and reflect on it now, turning 30 was a bigger deal than turning 40 for me, because I felt like I was so far away from what all my friends' lives were like. And I thought I knew what I was going for, but it felt so far out of reach. And I wonder if already at that stage there was something underlying of, is this enough? You've just been following this path because that's what you were told to follow. Is it enough? And it wasn't until later on in my 30s that I discovered that actually, no, this isn't enough. I want more.
So then you'd go and speak to her then? Yeah.
29, 30, I think I'd go and talk to.
It's always interesting. I choose a different age each time. What's today's? Probably still 7-year-old Steph. That's when everything changed for her. And when I feel her at the driving seat in present day, I know why she's showing up. I know she's feeling sad. I know she's feeling insecure. I know she just needs a little bit of reassurance that she's got everything she needs, that she is loved, that she is supported. So when life takes a little bit of a U-turn for me, she always comes to the table and is like, oh my God, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to cope with this? And all of that sort of. So present day is probably 7-year-old Steph. But other times it will be 19-year-old Steph, or new parent Steph, or Jesus, what am I doing kind of thing. So it's just, and that's what I love about the inner child work that I do, is that we get to have these conversations with our younger selves. We get to do that, and we get to notice when she needs that love and support, and when she's showing up and maybe driving the car somewhat erratically.
So powerful.
Yeah, it really is. So it was a game changer for me when I first went back and had reconnected with her. So it's really, really powerful. But question for you, what would you want to be remembered for? Like, let's just imagine your eulogy and you've got all these amazing people there going, oh, Shelley was, what would you want them to do?
Well, I mean, do you know what? I think I'm going to use the word just, and I don't use that very often because I always think it downplays things, but I would want people to just remember me with a smile. And I mean that really genuinely. Like, I just hope that I make a positive difference. And I don't mean like changing everybody's lives. I just mean, I hope that my presence in people's lives will have been a positive thing. So at my funeral, I just want people to smile like, you know, I want them to say like she had a really good innings. You know, she just enjoyed it, didn't she? That's what I want them to say. And that she encouraged everybody else to enjoy it.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. You know, some people are really uncomfortable talking about things like that. And I think when you've had loss, unexpected loss, it makes you desensitized to the fact that you are going to die one day.
Yeah.
And people are going to die one day. And actually, let's use that and think about those types of things. Is who do I want to be right now?
Yeah.
What life am I living?
And we obviously have lots of these conversations about spirituality or lack of, and you know, I have
opposite ends sometimes.
we have so much we cross over on, and so much we're like, we sit on opposite ends, and for that reason, I don't find myself comfortable talking about death. Although I have a strange obsession with death, but that's a whole other conversation. But I'm really comfortable with the fact that, you know, it's coming to us all. And to that end, just want to, you know, enjoy and do the best I can with what I've got. So, and have a positive impact on others. It's a bit cheesy, but
I don't think it is. I think intentional living is about, you know, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I want people to remember me for? What do I want? When I'm on my deathbed, do I want to look back and go, I did that well?
Absolutely. What I don't want to do is lay there and say, I wish I'd.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That's probably one of the most important things. And we use that as a... Go on.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things. One of the most beautiful gifts that death gives you is this opportunity to say, is what I'm doing enough? Is this what I want for my life? And I'm going to make change.
Yeah. And you and I both know that well, and that is why we've made the changes we have at the various points of our lives.
100%. Can you tell our listeners how they can find you and how they can work with you?
Well, as you've already heard, I'm a little bit prolific on the socials. So if you want to see me showing up in your feed on a daily basis, best place is Instagram at Shelley Bosworth Coaching. I make it very easy to find. I do have a free Facebook group if you are more inclined towards Facebook. This, I've said is slowly, because if you don't put your teeth in, it can come out all kinds of ways wrong. The Successful Ladies Escape Lounge. And there are various ways to kind of find out more about getting a shot of Shelley. But those are the best ways to start, Instagram or the Facebook group.
I will add in there that you aren't just a business coach. You do support people in life as well, don't you?
I do, yeah. So I was talking to someone this morning about, you know, the whole niche piece, and I don't really have a niche. You know, my work has evolved really organically. Predominantly, I work with business owners, and I roll in we do lots of mindset stuff as well as the business stuff, because you and I are very passionate about this. You don't just get to work on strategic stuff, because stuff is going to come up from a mindset perspective all the time. I work with women in the business world, because of course that's the world I come from, and I have some clients who just come to me because, you know, life's a bit of a bloody mess. They're not quite sure where to go next. So it sounds like I'm like all things to all people, and that's the first thing I say to all my business clients: we cannot be all things to all people, as Steph will remember me and her having a conversation. But yeah, I kind of, business in my eyes are businesses which are really important. They're just a vehicle to the life we want. So even when, and you know, you won't mind me saying this, you know, the work we do for your business is about you creating the life you want. So yes, I help you with your business because I know you want to achieve certain things in your life. So that's where that kind of more holistic piece does sometimes come in.
Yeah, and I know from my experience of the one-to-ones that we have, we'll sometimes look at strategy, but then we're looking at noise or the whatever's going on in my life as well, and how I'm going to make it work, or what the end goal is and what I want to achieve by creating this offering or whatever else, to bring that in line with the life that me and Grange want to live now the children are older and everything. So but no, the work that you do isn't just around business. There's so much more to it than that. And I think coaches can get a rough ride sometimes, the word coach. But I think I said this to you. I was talking to another coach ages ago, and she said, why don't I call myself a coach? And firstly, I don't align to the word coach anyway. I don't feel what I do is coaching. But I said to her, because actually most of the coaches I've met are a little bit, and she said, well, that's true for me as well. But I've decided to adopt the word coach and do it fucking brilliantly, to obliterate all of that. It's like, fair play to you. I love that reframe. So
yeah. And I get it. Look, the word coach doesn't align for everybody. There's a coach for bloody everything out there. But it aligns for me. I like her. I'm going to take that too. I just want to be a fucking brilliant coach.
Which you are. You aren't going to be, you are. I can
thank you.
I'm going to be, you're not going to be doing anything, you already are.
All I want to be is a fucking brilliant coach to my clients.
Exactly. Thank you for taking time out of your day today. It's been really lovely chatting to you. We could chat for hours, we always do, but I will leave it there. I'm going to put all of Shelley's links in the show notes so that you can go over and find her, but she's definitely somebody to have in your team for sure. Thank you, Shelley.
Pleasure to be in your team.
Thank you.